there we go. Hello. Are we live? I think we are live. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Vagabond Dog Industry Chats. This week, we have a very special guest, multi-talented designer, developer, artist, musician, a jack of all trades, and a master of plenty. Founder of Ska Studios and a creator of crazy titles, including Salt and Sacrifice, Charlie Murder, Dishwasher Dead Samurai, and some very oldies, including I Made a Game with Zombies in It, ZP2K9, and more and more and more. There's still more. Welcome, James Silva. How are you doing, homie?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all, and master of trade, no, jack of all trades, master of plenty. I still have conflicted feelings about that because I think I'm awful at all of these individual things. But when I work them all together, I can kind of scrap a game out of them.
I mean,
That's where I'm
that's all anybody really needs to do at the end of the day.
at. And everyone says stuff like that too, and I get bored hearing myself saying it just because I've heard. Yeah, I don't know if it's like the humility or the just the imposter syndrome that's everywhere, but everyone thinks that their own art is awful and their own work is awful, and I'm no exception to that. So
Right,
so
right.
that said, yeah, how's it going?
That's good. That's good. I mean, I mean, we can actually. I kind of want to jump into that because that it is something that is like hyper pervasive in games in general and indie games. That like consistent, like, oh, I'm still not good enough. Oh, I'm still not good enough. 3 games later, oh, I'm still not good enough. 10 games later, oh, I'm still not good enough. Do you think that's just like a perpetual part of the creative mind and process, or is it like something that can be fixed or worked on?
I like when I said I almost get bored of hearing it coming from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just normal. I think we're stuck with it. I think it's here to stay. And I think the sentiment of being bored with it is like, yeah, we're all like that. Stop saying that. It's
Right.
just fake humility, and I'm doing it too, and I'm being fake humble too. I mean, it's all we all think our art sucks, but we're all pretty okay at it.
Right.
We do well enough, over so many iterations. I think probably a lot of it is learning more and more about, I don't know. You learn more things, you realize how what your old stuff didn't meet the new standard you have.
Mm-hmm.
But then your new stuff doesn't meet that standard either. So now you have twice as much stuff that doesn't meet a new
Right.
standard. And it's
It's like I noticed that what in the midst of like working on something, because you're learning while you're building, and getting better while you're building, by the time you're finished it, the parts that you made at the beginning now suck, and you kind of want to like constantly improve that older stuff, and you can never, but by the time you finish that, then the stuff that you made at the end of the last phase, it just like it's a big bad loop.
oh yeah.
um
Did you ever see there was a Reddit post, like, I must, could have been like a year ago, could have been 10 years ago. That's
right.
what happens when you turn. I just turned 40, and I that's what happens when you turn 40, is the things that you remember are, could have been last year, could have been 10 years ago. Oh geez. But this guy who, like, he spent 13 years making an indie pixel art platformer.
Mm-hmm.
um and you can watch, like, he made a video just being like here's how you spend 13 years making a video game. And you can kind of see these sorts of, essentially what you just said, but this guy realizing that about himself over this 13-year journey of how he's constantly learning new things and saying, wait, I have to go back and fix this because this doesn't meet that standard.
Right.
And like one of the at some point, it's a 2D platformer. At some point, he's like, okay, I want to do shading where, the top left of everything, that's where the light's hitting, and the bottom right, that's where shadow is. But my character is a 2D sprite that I'm flipping, so I'm gonna have to recreate every sprite for two. So he goes back and does this for a game that, again, has been 13 years on, and, like, when it came out, I think, maybe it had 10,000 upvotes on Reddit, and I mean, long story short, it didn't become, the next Braid or anything,
Right.
but he definitely put that effort into it, and that's why deadlines are important. But it's an interesting story, and the guy realizes, like, yeah, I made a weird thing. This was a
Right.
weird part of my life, and I learned some lessons. But what an interesting story.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, you're kind of end up in that loop of game dev for game dev's sake. It's like,
Hmm.
uh, I'm building to satisfy myself, and more than I am even considering the final product or whatever. But I think lately you have been absolutely considering a final product, as we see you announce some news today for the upcoming Salt and Sacrifice. For those who have not heard about the game yet, and what you've announced today, what can you tell us about the game?
Yeah, so it's one thing I have to do between now and, well, one thing I have to do like a week ago is get really good at pitching Salt and Sacrifice because when asked to pitch it, I am, oh geez, I'm so awful at it. But yeah, I mean it's so Salt and Sanctuary was very much like a question of what would happen if you tried to make a 2D Dark Souls, and it's a there's a whole game to it, but it's depending on whether you're sold on 2D Dark Souls or not, either the conversation can continue or you can
Right.
just return to your life as normally planned. And yeah, Salt and Sacrifice is very much of that vein. It does like the mage hunting aspects to it give it an interesting sort of, it's like a dynamic replayable, um I don't know, not mode, but just section. But yeah, it's a bit Monster Huntery with the mage hunts, and then what we just showed today uh was just the online multiplayer stuff. So it's a world full of monsters, bosses, mages, everything. You're exploring, you're surviving traps, you're surviving monsters, you're opening up new passageways and all that soulsy stuff. But for mage hunts, for going after bosses, you can always summon people to come in and help you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one thing we announced today was you can be invaded when if you summon a rando, you can be invaded by a rando as well. I mean, it's very much, it's still the soulsy formula. And it's it was all Shane's idea. This production, it's a partnership of two now. It's me and my buddy Shane Lynch. And I think he's in the chat. He's asking, he asked my favorite question: when is Charlie Murder 2 coming out, in the chat?
Right.
Which I'm always grateful for, because I need someone to ask that more often. I need that question in my life more.
Right.
Um, but yeah, Shane's idea was let's just plug in some multiplayer.
Yeah.
Add,
Let's just plug it
add,
in.
add yeah,
It's just
add,
easy. Flip the switch.
multiplayer equals new multiplayer,
Right.
semicolon, multiplayer dot init.
Right.
There we go.
I mean,
Um,
have you found it a challenge? It's something that I've been working on actually a lot lately. Is dealing with not direct multiplayer stuff, but like, God, making sure that all the data is synced properly between server and the local client. Like, is it something that you found particularly difficult, or has it been a slow learning process? What's it been like for you?
oh, you'd have to ask Shane. And that's the greatest. So Salt and Sanctuary, I wrote all the code to that, just 100% by myself. Now Shane is doing all the multiplayer. So I'm pretty much still doing, like, just the game engine stuff, world design, animation. I mean, I'm like, probably this cat. Like, essentially all the local running stuff
Mm-hmm.
is it's my code, for better or for worse. And then Shane's adding all the network stuff. That in of itself, the networking side of it, is like a whole, it's like an additional 100% of the work. It's a lot. And I mean, it introduces all sorts of like weird considerations about let's say progress, but progression. It's like, if I've opened this door and you haven't, is the door open, is it not? Those sorts of weird cases. And oh geez, we'll go through, uh how did this happen? Like we'll be playing together, I'll be like, wait, you're seeing this, I'm seeing this, what went wrong? How should it go right? Is that
Right.
how we really want it to go right? Like, and then it's like, wait. Okay, let's take like 5 steps back. Okay, so if you've done this and I've done this, and there are so many scenarios like that, and geez, I really hope that we have it all. I mean, I think like it always feels like we have it figured out, and then like we'll go to play again. We'll be like, we never thought about that scenario, And so
Right.
I mean, obviously, hitting these scenarios right now is a perfect scenario. Hitting them after launch would
Right.
suck.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, it plays really well. The PvP, we have like just the vanilla, the easy PvP, and then we've been kind of experimenting with weirder factions. And then the one that I didn't even interpret it as such, but then Shane just said in the Discord that that's James's baby. The one weird one that I guess was my idea is it's like a PvE faction where you're specifically hunting this one kind of like of it's a type of zombified thing. They're called the haze burnt. They've been basically corrupted by magical haze to the point where they're soulless husks, effectively zombies, but they're different. So you invade someone's world and you're just there to hunt those things. And as you hunt them and you collect their residue, you summon these chaos wraiths or haze wraiths, that's what they're called, who are just instruments of chaos, and they will just go and hunt down the host. So you're just in there, you're hunting little zombies and collecting their stuff, and as you do that, monsters spawn and hunt the host. So the host can ignore you at their peril, and just kill the monsters as they come in, or they can hunt you. And often the host will have. I think by default the host will have one ally. So it's the host plus one ally. They see someone invade, they're like, let's go kill this dude,
Mhm.
and like, so as the invader, as the one just there to kill monsters, I mean, you do engage in like a bit of cat and mouse, and that was kind of the fun thing about finally getting some. So we do a bunch of like multiplayer testing just to make sure things work, but
Right.
like getting friends involved where it's like, all right, you two will be in here, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna try to do and like trying to do those scenarios, it's like some really interesting parkour gameplay emerges where you're like grappling, hooking away, and jumping from ledge to ledge, and um, the pursuers could try to like shoot you out of the sky with ranged weapons and so on. I mean, it's great that it works, but it's scenarios where you never really imagine them working that way until you play it, and
Right.
yeah,
That's
so
the fun.
so that's cool. I'm glad. I mean, I guess long story short, I'm glad it's fun because
Now,
it's been a lot of work to implement, and yeah, it's pretty cool. It's good.
so I mean, it sounds like is it a lot of like diegetic in world stuff, or is there like lobby systems, or how is it being set up?
Oh, geez, diegetic. That's a games word. I
Uh,
totally forget what it means.
do you have to transition out of the game world to access the multiplayer kind of thing?
No, you don't. Yeah, so
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's again, it's very soulsy.
yeah, that's
You have
really
a
really cool.
but yeah, you have like a candle you light, and then when if a matchmaker, if someone who's lit a matching candle, like basically you're summoning and they're the summonee, they get pulled into your world, and then once they're pulled into your world, it'll start pulling but actually I think no, as soon as you light the candle that says like I'd like to summon a helper, it's fair game. Anyone
Right,
can enter
right.
your world. Yeah, so
That
so you do that, and it could just be all invaders. There's a cooldown timer, so you're not going to get invaded once after another. So
right.
we're trying to be really mindful of griefers and
The
just
internet.
the internet. Yeah. That's like the nightmare scenario, and like there's going to be balance issues, and we're just going to have to work through them.
Mhm.
We're gonna do as much you know attempted balance testing as possible. But there'll be issues. I'm totally cognizant to the inevitability of multiplayer balance issues.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I mean that's what patching is for. I mean, it's we love doing this. we, uh I love playing it, and yeah, I mean, if it turns out that like, one weapon there's a lot of there's been a little bit of this in the trailers where you'll have like weapons that are tied to runic arts that are it's like this crazy wild variety of just like effectively spells. Now the
Mhm.
thing is, in the game lore, mages are the worst. They represent this existential threat to all life. Just they're warped corruptions of reality. So you never use magic, but you use the runic arts, which is it's basically like channeling magic, but not really. I mean, it's definitely a lore to get around what is essentially that you're casting spells. But yeah, so the spells are, I mean, they're varied, and there are probably ones that can be like super abusable, but like
Mhm.
right now it's like I don't think any that I see are, but like
Yeah,
there will be, and when there are, then
it's
um,
also something that's super hard to tell when it's. I mean, like, God, I can't imagine. I'm glad you've got someone to bounce it off of, while you're in dev, because making multiplayer alone is like insane.
oh
Um,
god, yeah,
but it's one of those things that I think is a really big challenge for indie studios, especially super small ones, where you've got a multiplayer game. Like, how can you possibly test, the gamut of what thousands, tens of thousands of simultaneous players are going to be doing with your game? You can have the
yeah,
best intentions and design and everything, but like until it's in the hands of so many people, you kind of just got to put a lot of faith into your design skills. Um,
yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen that. I did a video where a developer reacts to a speed run of Salt and Sanctuary, and it was basically me just like laughing and being like, What now? How are they doing?" Because it was I mean, Salt and Sanctuary went through QA where it
mm-hmm.
was it was outsourced. It was it's not cheap to outsource a game to QA, and
Oh,
QA
I know.
found a yeah, I mean, so for those of you who don't know, I mean, $10,000 is probably on the cheap side
Yeah.
for like a full QA pass. So yeah, there's 10 grand, right? I mean, pretty decent used car. And or actually, maybe I'm dating myself again. But so like that much money went into QA. They find a lot of bugs, and you fix the bugs, and it's just this iterative process where you desperately hope you don't create new bugs. And then the game launched. I don't know how quickly it was that people discovered the super jump, but that was the one bug where it was like, okay, that one was an easy fix. But then, I mean, there's some interesting ones where it's like if you like cancel out of an airborne, like you use like an offhand weapon for an airborne ranged attack, and then you cancel out by switching weapons, then it resets your animation such that it thinks you're on the ground for like a split for like a single frame, and then while you're
Right.
on the ground, you can jump again and then repeat. I think it's something like that, but it's uh but yeah, I mean, so like watching this speed run, it was a lot of like animation, or like each one of them, I'm like, oh yeah, that one makes sense. Okay,
Right. Right. Right.
so,
Yeah. There's the
um,
brutality because because exactly how it's happening. Where most players, I guess, a casual person watching that would not understand exactly why it's happening, but the the pain of realizing your design choices.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, but do you care if it's a speed runner, like, and they're
So funny story. The super jump, that was the first one that I learned about, and that was so that one I fixed. I put out a patch, and a a speed it's like, hopefully there's just like an ethical issue, right? Good way to start anything. uh but yeah, a speed runner was like, hey, can I have like the pre-patch build, because I'm gonna be in summer games done quick, and like my entire speed run revolves around this not being fixed.
oh wow.
So I think what happened, I think I set him up with the old version, and then I just in the next update I put it back in, because I was like, you know what, people like it, right? I mean, it's just if it doesn't really harm the game for people who are new
Right.
players who want the experience as intended, like it doesn't harm it for them. And then people who like breaking the game, they love it. They like this aspect of the game as a broken piece of piece of art, right? And everyone's happy that way. I mean, it's still weird.
Right,
It's like
right,
okay,
right,
I guess I'll re-break it to just everyone will be happy that way, you know.
right.
And I think it works. There's yeah, I think it works. Obviously, I'm still like a little bit mixed about it because it's such
Right. I
a
mean,
weird compromise.
right. I think in that compromise, the like one person who could potentially not be happy is you, right? Like if you're if you're willing to let the the speedrunning community or the game breaker community or whatever have their fun, you're willing to, I guess, let go of the ego that's required to allow that to happen, then yeah, it's all good. But if it's keeping you up at night, man, fix it.
Yeah. And then I guess the having said all that, it's like, all right, Salt and Sacrifice though has online multiplayer where you can kill each other. So if we're gonna be
Oh,
happy.
yeah,
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 yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
when
That's when it changes. That's
that's
a
when it
big change.
changes.
That's what's a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
change.
Yeah, that's when it's gonna be like those sorts of exploits, like we're gonna that's gonna be such a full-time endeavor, is like just going after exploits because yeah, I mean that's super important. And
Right.
that was my least favorite part about it, like in the Souls games, Invasions, PvP, like I you'd have some fun ones, and then you'd have ones where it was just totally unbalanced, something just went totally weird. And yeah, I mean, that's the goal, is to not make it unfun, to make it like, if you
Hmm,
want to
hmm.
play multiplayer together, if you want to do some invasions, if you want to show up and grief someone, or just try to quash down a griefer within the rules of the game, like that should be okay, but when things get out of hand, when people are having fun with it, that sucks. And then that like all like it's a ton of work to put multiplayer in. Like it
Yeah.
would kill me if it's like we do all this work and it's like, but the game was ruined by
Right, right.
cheaters or whatever. Like, oh geez, that would, yeah. I that is a thought I have. Because yeah, it's been a ton of work, and I love how things are coming together. But people are they will, wherever there's like an opportunity to just like tweak the
Hmm.
boundaries, like they will be tweaked.
Yeah, it's fun. We had a conversation on the show, I think, a couple weeks ago, about like players' ability to optimize themselves out of fun. Right? It's like
Oh yeah.
it's a weird human thing where, like that's the reason why you'll barrel roll across a map instead of walking, even though it's not fun. It's just like that much faster, so you'll do it naturally.
Huh.
Or
Yeah.
you'll bunny hop across the map. It's not more fun, but it's optimal or whatever. Or you'll just use this one weapon over and over again because it's optimal. And I
Yeah.
feel like I've had this experience so many times when a cheat or an exploit is presented to me and I become aware of it. It takes like an actual amount of self-restraint not to like use it in a way that's kind of maybe revealing too much about my own personal character. But I think it's a natural part of human nature to want to maximize your exploit, and it you know ruins the game for the person you're playing against, for sure. But I also think it ruins the game for yourself. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so
One reminds me of Symphony of the Night. There was a weapon called the Shield Rod, and it was like, if you had that plus, was it was it like the Alucard shield? If you combine that as a combo and pressed square and circle, and like none of this was, I don't think any of this was like displayed anywhere. It
mm,
was just, it was all in the game, but I don't think it was shown anywhere. If you did this combo, then anything your shield touched would be dealt 255 damage every frame, and it
right.
used, and it would also heal you while it did that. And so I think, you know what, I've beaten Symphony of the Night, but not legitimately. I was using the stupid shield,
Right.
and yeah, so I was, and I've beaten
And how do you feel about that?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I've beaten Order of Ecclesia legitimately, and I thought that was great, and like I think back to Symphony of the Night, and I'm like, what did I rob myself of?
Right, right, right. So I don't know how much of a planner you are, and when it comes to game dev. but if you are, yeah, you know, you've mentioned a couple times that you're planning to do, you know, keep a monitor on the multiplayer, patch it out. What is your sort of strategy for post launch then? Is it just let's just watch and see what happens and keep going? You know, I'm a very meticulous. I'm like, okay, when I finish this game, I'm going to do like 3 months of this, and then I'm going to kickstart these other 15 games that I want to make. But what's your strategy?
Yeah, what's the strategy? Yeah, no, I think it's just oh geez, cats everywhere again. I think it's kind of the same as pre-launch, which is just like kind of keep working hard until um we don't have to anymore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like some of it, no, um we can't really talk about yet.
Fair.
But I think definitely, and I think we've alluded to this idea, like we definitely want to add more content. Which would be like a kind of a new weird thing for like I've never made a DLC. I mean, not saying this would be like specifically like a paid DLC, but just like I've never added new content to
Right.
a
It's always been the game's done and done. Right.
yeah.
Then
But yeah,
how do you
the
feel about
nature of
carrying on then? You know, even just doing multiplayer patches with a game, not
right,
having
right.
that like definitive
Right.
cutoff.
So actually, you know, Salt and Sanctuary had much more like post-launch support. I mean,
Mhm.
part of it was all the porting. Spent a lot of, you know, I it's the stupidest one of the stupidest things I did in was so for localization, you know, Microsoft when they published Dead Samurai, Vampire Smile, and Charlie Murder, they always did the localization on their side. And for Salt and Sanctuary, you know, I was planning on doing, you know, getting localization like, you know, properly done, but I had in the tools I made, I had them all rigged up so that like I could auto generate Google Translates of all the strings. And you know, at some point I mentioned that to my Sony rep, and they were like, "Oh, awesome!" And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's, you know, not good enough to release, right?" And he was like, "Meh," you know. So I was like,
Oh.
you know, if he says anyway, it was a bad idea. I I uh I won't, you know, I'm not like it's like I'm not like trying to blame him. I think he probably didn't really think about it. I didn't really think about it. But if you have two people saying like, "Oh yeah, it's fine," you know,
Right.
that's an easy way to just kind of yeah. So anyway, like post launch for Salt and Sanctuary was a lot of you know, reaching out to actually it wasn't so much me reaching out, it was a lot of localizers. Dude, you look like you need help. You know? And you know, so it was that and then porting. And the porting was all, you know, outsourced. I was gonna say out of house, in house, out.
Right.
But yeah, it was all
Outhouse. It was all
outsourced.
outhouse.
It was all outhoused, yeah. And so that didn't really take a lot of work, but then there was always like a little bit of, you know, marketing type stuff, or
Mm-hmm.
you know, if there was like cover art or something. So yeah, I was the support for that. I think it was like through 2018. You know, yeah, I think it's through 2018. I was still working on Salt and Sanctuary. So you know, I mean that's and that a part of that was why you know, between like Dead Samurai, Vampire Smile, Charlie Murder, like each one of those games, once they were out, it was like time to work on the next one, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
but they were only Xbox 360, and I mean, and more recently, Vampire Smile and Charlie Murder, I got them, I outsourced the port for them to go into Steam.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so for Salt and Sanctuary, having that on, you know, multiple platforms and just keeping the development going became more normal. You know, the pace of release was way slowed down. I mean, it used to be like a new game every 2.5 years, and now I don't know if it's like the games got bigger or, you know, releasing them on, I think releasing them on more platforms had a definite impact.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also I fear that I'm slowing down. I'm getting old. I
Happens to the
mean,
best of us.
I don't have a great big wizard beard, but you know, I am 40.
Yeah. It. I mean, it's also like a different time, right?
It's true.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
XBLA days, like I remember there was a period where you literally had to pay to patch your game, and it was not cheap,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
right? That was a I
Yeah.
remember
Yeah.
that was a big stink in the early 360 days for sure. On all the
Yeah.
platforms, it cost a lot of money to put out a patch.
I think
Um,
it was, and it was one of those things where, because I was, working pretty closely with Microsoft, and never for Microsoft.
yeah,
I think at some point someone thought I was, owned by them, and it's like, no, I was, I mean, I've always been independent.
yeah. Mhm.
But yeah, like I'd see sides to it where it's like, okay, this, a news site says Microsoft is doing this, and I know from working from Microsoft, or working with Microsoft, like I know that it's not like that, but then I can't talk about how it's, because
Right.
the NDAs are always involved. And but yeah, I mean, I think that was, I mean, I remember specifically that was a lot of sort of overblown hype, about the reality of it.
Gotcha.
I've never paid for a patch.
Right.
Um,
I was not a dev at that point in time, so I can't really speak to the
yeah.
accuracy of these things. But I mean, again, it was it was a different time also in that
There used to
this
be a 50 megabyte limit to XBLA games,
right,
and Dishwasher Dead Samurai was one of the first games that went beyond that limit, but only that's when they upped the limit to 150 megabytes.
right, because they
And
wanted to
then
fit on the memory card still.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean the scope of games was way smaller back then.
Right.
Like the scope of like and those were $10 games, and now I mean, Salt and Sacrifice is going to be $20, and I'm assuming, I don't know. What if Shane says differently? I don't know who's boss anymore. It's confusing.
the
But
I mean, I think there's been a massive shift in expectation in terms of games and long tail support for them now. That's a funny. I see Palladino in the chat saying
yeah, yeah, I saw it too.
Puzzle Quest at $15 had a huge
Oh
amount of
man.
meetings and discussion. I mean, I get it. It was weird. It's actually very fast. It's very fascinating always to talk to you because you kind of like really did come up in that wild west of digital indie titles, right? Like you,
So
I mean, like
yeah, no,
I
I never. Geez, it's weird being like a veteran, because I don't feel like one. I mean, I've
Mhm.
been around, like, yeah, we were just talking before the show came on about 2008 and GDC. That was when I think that's when I met Chris Palladino, because that came up. But yeah, that was 2008 when Microsoft was hyping XNA and what it could do for indie devs. And yeah, and yeah, I mentioned before, that's when I met Peter Molyneux and Cliffy B and Itagaki, Tomonobu Itagaki.
Tomonobu Itagaki, yeah,
Yeah, they
and
were all at the they
and
were
that
it was all in the green room back there. Yeah.
and Cliff was yeah, and as I said, then you have outlasted them all. All three of
I've
those devs have
I've
stopped
out
making
I've
games.
outlasted them all. Well,
Completely.
something that's a weird so speaking of outlasting, because I still like in the moment and for years after, I was annoyed, and then at some point I got it, and then now it's just kind of funny again. But it was Peter Molyneux, and I might have told you the story before, but this one's for the 12 people watching. Um, so Peter Molyneux in the green room, he was like, this is when I was like half done with Dishwasher Dead Samurai, and it's like this was my shot, it's I was working a day job. I quit my day job. I'm just, whatever savings I had, I'm just taking the bank account to zero to get this thing launched, to get this thing published. And and that's where I'm at. I'm like, when I go home from this, I'm gonna, like I gotta finish this game. I've gotta make this great. Um, and so Peter Molyneux, he's like, so now that you're out here, you're in front of all these people. What are you gonna do next? And I'm like, I've got to finish the game. I mean, what I just told you is what's running through my head, and I've got to finish the game. And he's like, no, 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 because in a few months, no one will remember you. No one will know who you are. No, what you should do is use this opportunity to find a job at a small independent studio. And I didn't know what small meant, like, relative, maybe like for in the moment I'm like small independent. Like is Lionhead considered a small independent? Is he trying to do like a Willy Wonka and the Charlie, you know, in the chocolate factory thing? Like is he like my boy, you know? So I'm like, you mean like Lionhead? No, 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 no. No, not Lionhead. So basically he said like, I don't want to hire you. You shouldn't finish your game. You should get hired by someone, but not me. We don't want you. Which was like such a, you know, and that was as I was you know, spending the next year finishing the game, and then the next game after that, like each game, and still, you know, from then till now, each game I set out to do, I'm like, what if this is the one where Peter Molyneux's head appears above me in a dream, and he was like, no, 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 you should have listened to Peter Molyneux. You know, like but but I'm still doing it. I'm still here.
That's right.
I
Just
did not I
despite
did
him.
not take his I did not take his advice. I still feel a little bit off about that. And I do like now I think I understand the advice in that like there's so much about just about running an indie business that I'm still learning, and it's the kind of stuff I should have known like 15 years ago. You know, uh but you know, but I'm learning it now. And like, you know, if I took him up on his advice, I can't imagine what studio he would be thinking of. Maybe the Keflings game. Remember that? A Kingdom for Keflings? Maybe that
Ninja
Ninja
Bee?
Bee. Yeah, maybe Ninja Bee
I
was what
remember
he was
Ninja Bee.
thinking of. Or yeah, because I'm like what would he have meant by a small independent studio in 2008? Um, but yeah, that was but you know, I feel like if I did, you know, take him up on on his advice, you know, maybe I would know things about you know, business development
Right.
that I'm still learning.
Right. I
But
mean,
you know, I did okay though, right? Like
oh,
that's
for sure. And we would have been deprived some amazing games. So
oh
screw
oh
you, Peter
shucks.
Molyneux. Please come on the show. No.
No, 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 no. Oh, he might,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Well, you know what? Now that I've, you know, insulted his good name, maybe he'll feel,
He has to come on.
yeah,
Justify.
yeah.
Fair enough. The well, I mean, there is, I kind of get what he's getting at. It's like you want, as an indie dev, you want to minimize the amount of bullshit, garbage, bureaucratic nonsense that you've got to do. Hello Kitty. um and just focus on making games. And like, that's like the number one smartest thing you can do as an indie dev, and I think it's a thing that neither of us did particularly well, is handing off more of those responsibilities, and you know, just making more availability for yourself to make the game. So one, you have more time to do it, and or two, you don't have to like work really really fucking hard in order to make everything happen. um
Yeah.
it's a tough lesson that I don't think a lot of indies learn that well, because we have so many uh like you, one as close to a one-man studio as I think realistically they gets. Every one-man studio is not a one-man studio, I'll say this on record now. There's always, you know, like QA, you know, outsourcing, and
Oh yeah,
you know, all sorts of other things that go on. So but the it's we see so many of these, like, you know, solo indie dev stars, and assume that like we've got to take on everything ourselves, as opposed to, you know, outsourcing more, bringing in more qualified people to do different parts. Is that a lesson that you think you've gotten better with over time? Was there anything where you had a real moment where you're like, fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm gonna pay somebody to do this?
I think, I mean, I think I'm getting closer. It also comes down to, well, because yeah, to not do everything yourself, you have to pay someone to do things
Mm.
for you. There are cases where the thing that you're paying them to do, you could already do like pretty decently, and then there are cases where you can't do it, you know, anywhere near to the quality of what they can do. So like
Right.
localization is a, you know,
Right.
that is the most perfect example. And that I will never localize into Spanish or French with the same level of nuance and meaning. You know,
Mhm.
I took French in high school. That is my level of expertise. But yeah, I mean that's a so then art's it's a trickier one because like I like drawing I like and I you know animating I have this animation tool I created that I've been it's essentially it's got code in it that dates back to like 2006 2007 this animation tool that I use now it's got you know in inverse kinematics it's got
Wow.
skeletal hierarchy back then it was just pieces floating in space it wasn't but the keyframing was still the same anyway only I know how to use it
Right.
it's a skill but you know I mean that they're essentially what I'd be looking at with that it's like okay if I gave up animation and gave up art yeah you know I'd find someone who was a much better artist than me and I'd have to accept how this is something that I can no longer, you know, it's
Right.
it's no longer me excelling at it. It's no longer me like just being like, look, I made something cool. Like appreciate my art. You know, no, it's me saying like my stuff's not cool enough. This person, they are the, you know, and
Right.
there's this part of my brain that's like, no, James, you've got to just get better. You've got to get to the level of that person. You can do it. You can just, you know, keep working on it. I don't know how misguided that part of my brain is. You know? But you know, I mean, I'm still working at it, and I feel like I'm mixed on that, right? Like
Right.
I still, you know, I feel like I can do it, and then, but then, you know, you see some art come out of other studios, some just fantastic 2D art, and you're like, oh, yeah, I guess I still have a ways to go.
Well, and then
Um,
I mean, it also becomes a bit of a question like how much of your overall creative process is doing, you know, the art and music and stuff. Like, well, I assume your mind isn't blank while you're drawing, uh,
yeah, yeah,
right? You're
yeah, yeah.
thinking
No,
about the
it's
game and stuff. So if
yeah,
you
yeah.
remove
No,
that, what
it's all
happens?
it's all part of you know what I think is the design that I want to go into the game. And I mean, yeah, I mean you can um it would like if I you know had a bunch of like sketches like here's what I want to do and then work with an artist to just really make them pop that would probably be a good thing to do too. But yeah, I mean currently, you know, Salt and Sacrifice is it's all my art, all my animation. But yeah, it's a conversation I have in my head.
Right.
And also, you know, like kind of going back to like every task, you know, it costs money. Um, and that's always been like just it's a weird question, right? Because it's like, okay, if you use, you know, if you get like publisher money or
Mm-hmm.
an you know an investment money, like then that's no that's no personal risk. Otherwise, you know, I mean, what if you're, you know, like throwing the cost of like a new house at this game, and then what if the game flops? You know, then it's, you know, then you sell your house, right? I mean, like you don't want to have that kind of thing weighing on you. At you know, at some point, when it becomes more complicated, then I just want to make a game that I want to play. You know, when it becomes more complicated than that, it loses something, and then but does it have to become more like I think at some level it does have to become more complicated, and then at some level it doesn't have to. You know, and that's where you pick your battles and um yeah, and see all these all this all of that verbal diarrhea, right? That's the stuff where it's like, yeah, I just want to animate like a dude doing like a cool sword swing attack. That's that's
Right.
what,
Right.
that's what I'm here for.
Right. I mean, and there's a lot to be said. Like, I mean, I don't want to get into a whole like life philosophy of like, what are we really all doing this for? But if that's like what it, you know, why you're doing it, so that you have the opportunity to express yourself through art, through music, through code, however you want, right? And then that's what you need to keep doing, right? Some people are in this to make money. That's what they're making games for. They want to make money, right? It's a terrible choice. If you
Oh,
are
it's
trying
horrible.
if you're trying to make money, don't
It's
make games.
it's so weird.
But
Jeez.
there are a few misguided folk out there. That's what and then there's other people who I know some people who just really get off on enabling creative people, right? They're
Mm,
like, I'm never gonna do this anywhere near as well as this other dude or this collection of people. I want to empower those people. I want to enable those people, and they build little empires.
That's really
You
cool.
know, and that's a whole nother path. But I mean, you got to go into this for the reasons that you want to be in this, and if the reason you want to be in there is so that you can afford yourself the luxury of making cool art the way you want to do it, making cool animation the way you want to do it, go for it. Like there's no reason why you have to do it any other way.
And that's why I mean getting people to listen to your music when you're a musician is so hard to do, and that's why I had to make Charlie Murder, because I wanted to be a punk band, and how else could I make people listen to my
Right,
than by making a fictional band by that name.
right.
Uh, yeah. Still no word on Charlie Murder 2. I do thank you for I see Zero Dragon Heart said they would localize Spanish for free. No, I'll pay you. um, that's actually, yeah, we have to lock down some lock down
It's a tough thing
things.
because I have kind of wanted to translate my games for a long time, but I've been super hesitant to do it because I don't know the languages and I have no idea what's actually being said once it's translated. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean, my game is just writing.
Right, right.
Like you wanted to make a punk band. I wanted to be an author, and so I had to trick everybody into reading a million words through a video game.
That's what that's what games are. They're ways to trick people into consuming the medium that we actually wanted to be
Right,
creating.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, so it's super scary to put that much faith and control over, for me at least, because my game is so text heavy. That's just something I
right, right,
can't.
right. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah. You can't really. I mean, unless you're a native speaker, you can't really know.
Right.
And I mean, every language just has so much nuance, and yeah, yeah. It's interesting. I didn't really like. I don't know. For some reason, like when you think about localization, just the most sort of broad, like at a glance approach to it. It's like, yeah, you're just like the dog walk to the house,
Right.
that's easy, like you just but then when there's so much nuance and you're trying to like put poetic flourishes into
Yep.
things, and
Yeah.
you don't want to be repeating words, because I wonder how how well stuff like that's translated, but I'll never know,
We'll
and
never know.
as long as people say that they're happy enough, then
Right.
that's the yeah.
Um. So I guess one of the things I actually was very curious to talk to you about was your XNA experience, and I guess sort of like it was around in a time like it was around when I started development, but it was kind of reaching its tail end.
Mm.
Um, and I kind of wanted to hear from you because these are questions and we've met many times, but I've never really like known enough to like ask what was the framework like, what were its advantages, why did you enjoy using it so much, and then what was the transition out and into monogame like for you?
So I mean, XNA and Monogame are essentially the same. Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just code, okay? So
Right,
so
right.
compared to
Everything is at the end of the day.
yeah, well, like compared to like Unity, right? With
Hmm.
Unity, you have a scene. You can drag items that have I mean, obviously they have code. But the way Unity organizes, it's like you can just drop things into a scene, and you can drop like a actually I know so little about Unity, so I'm gonna make
All
some
right.
assumptions.
I'll
Like
answer
you
the questions here then.
like say you drop some blocks on a scene, and you can
Yeah,
you can say, all right, these are physics enabled, so
yeah,
they're gonna land. You make like a guy that jumps on them, and he's physics enabled, so that'll just works,
yeah.
right? XNA is none of that. Before you can collide with something, you have to define what a thing is that can be collided. You have to define everything. It's all just code. I mean, it's
Right,
essentially it's not an engine, right? That's the That's the thing. It gets compared to engines. It's not an engine. It's just a framework for telling the computer to draw a thing here or draw essentially
Hmm.
DirectX calls, you know. So it's like, all right, clear the screen, draw this here, draw this here, draw this here, done, present. And audio and yeah, it had networking. I guess that might be it because I don't know how Monogame implements networking. And then Shane's doing all his own stuff. He'd have to tell you. We're doing playfab for that. I have no idea how it works.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, XNA is it's a framework. Monogame essentially takes every single, every single class, method, function from XNA and implements these things to work, one to one how they worked with XNA. Um, Releasing on on platforms, that's more complicated. There
Hmm.
are always weird things that happen. So I did Monogame on PS4. That was I did that myself, and that was hard. It was, things would just break in weird ways, and there would just be weird solutions to them. At some point, it involved like a Linux virtual machine. It was weird. But yeah, as Shane's saying in the chat, we actually have Shane rigged up a Unity project layer something. It's essentially like a Unity project that you can just plug in your whole monogame game into,
Right.
and Unity is just going to be like, oh, you wanted to render a thing here. Well, actually, you want to set some mesh dots and set the UV, mesh vertices and set their UV coordinates and set their material. And yeah, okay, we'll do that instead.
Right.
And it performs super well. It's confusing how well it performs
Like
because
a
it's
like a
like
shell
it's
interpreter.
yeah, I mean it's essentially like it's doing all the work of the monogame project and then like some Unity, some
Hmm.
mystery
Hmm.
Unity stuff. It's doing all of that and it's performing super well. And I mean you can just be like, all right, I'm gonna deploy PC, click, okay,
Right.
PS5, click. Actually, I think it's not that. Shane will be like, no, it's not that simple. Because Shane's been doing all that. I've just been working on, making monsters and weapons and maps and animations. It's been nice to do that. I hope Shane likes doing the Unity on PS5 stuff.
Shane, do you like doing the Unity and PS5 stuff?
He does say it was a ton of fun to write. I don't
That's
know if
good.
that's. I think he's not being sarcastic. I think that's an earnest sentiment.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating because like so I mean the modern game engines have made my development path and my life a lot easier and for the same for a lot of other devs that I've known. But I mean, I I remember talking to you about like these tools that you had been making way back when, and I was never sure if it was a joke or not when you said it was called silverware. Uh,
Yeah, I guess it's a joke because that didn't stick. I actually started giving things names because I was doing dev streams and people would be like, "What's this tool called? What's that tool called?" So now they have names. Yes, Shane is a weirdo who loves customizing and coding tricks.
there you go. It is very
Yeah,
satisfying when you get the right answer eventually. Um,
confirmed. But yeah. So like I have a tool for atlasing sprites and this is stuff that Unity just does, I think. But my atlasing tool, you, actually, who knows? Maybe the Unity one's way better anyway. But mine, you can like set certain flags for different sprites. You can set it so like one sprite will always like render another sprite relative to it and with a different shader effect or something like that.
right,
But so that tool I called the cartographer. It's an atlasing tool.
right.
Um, the skeleton, the animator is now called Skellingtons. Um, oh, the map editor is now called Salmon Maps because it sounds like Salmon Max,
Oh,
which is
okay.
which is like my favorite. Was that a Lucas game? I don't know. It
It
was like a
was the
point
Lucas.
like
No, it is
adventure
a
game.
good LucasArts game, and it was a good Telltale series too.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. Yeah, I never played that one.
I still
I
haven't.
like I wanted to, and then I was like, I bet because what came back into my mind was all of the moments just spent so frustrated because I just
Right.
didn't know where to go next. So like I don't want that back in my life. Like it was, I really liked playing it when I was like 12, but I don't think I want that back in my life, you know? Yeah, it's all using WinForms. Shane hates that. It doesn't scale. It's, you know, now that 4K monitors are so prevalent, like
Oh no.
WinForms, it's from the past, so it's just I'm talking to you on a it's LG, right? I think it's yeah, yeah. This LG, it's this incredible 1440p ultra wide curved thing, and then off to the side I have a 1080p screen, which so the scaling is off. It's off. It's it's not okay, but I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it.
Are you still making new tools, or do you think you've got your suite as needed?
I think I think I've made some new ones for Salt and Sacrifice. Um, yeah, I have, because I made the like a habit I got into with Salt and Sanctuary. It would be like each weapon can only have one sort of like special attribute. Like, does it swing faster? Does it swing slower? Is it you know, does it like deal extra poise damage? And it can only have one attribute like that. And with Salt and Sacrifice, I made it so that you can just add as many sort of like attribute flags as you want. And I made a whole system where it's a lot easier to add fields you know, from just like editing the code to add different fields to like weapons, armor. Um, so rather than the way it would happen in Salt and Sand, say I wanted to add a new field, um, I would, you know, add a new field to like the weapon, you know, class definition, and then I would, when I would load it, I would not load that field from an old, you know, an existing data file. And then when I'd save it,
Oh,
I would save in the field because, you know, if it tried to read it in, and then they're all binary files. It's
right,
a
right,
horrible
right,
thing to
right.
do.
Yeah.
Shane, it drives Shane crazy. Um, oh man, yeah, it's thanks for being in the chat. I was actually going to respond to the football comment earlier. But yeah, don't be a stranger. It's
Yes.
nice nice seeing you again.
Silva. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah. So just like, I don't know, things to make life a little bit easier with
Hmm.
how it stores, you know, fields and special attribute flags. It's a lot easier to, you know, define something as having like, you know, three different attributes as opposed to like just one, and then every time I make a new item, I have to add a new a new attribute. So you know, like a thing can have like a drinkable attribute, right? If like a potion has like a drinkable attribute
Right.
plus like a heals attribute, or a drinkable plus, you know, and those are, you're just, you know, you can just keep adding flags to give it different attributes. It's I don't know, like the little things. It's more flexible, and it's just the little things.
Right. And,
Um,
and I assume it also makes building easier overall. Like it doesn't take, you don't have to go in and edit every single item to add all kinds of attributes or whatever. I find that
oh,
it's like a thing I try to do really early on in a project is like assess the tools that I'm going to need and try and build for them. We do have a new test tool, so we can write and run tests and orchestrate a bunch of client not using before. Nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Drinkable swords are
Yeah, not
possible.
using WinForms. Yeah, no, I've told Shane if he ever wants to rewrite all of the tools to not use WinForms, he can he can go for it. My, you know, I tried recreating a tool using not WinForms. I don't know what it's called. Is it XAML? Is that what it's not, or like it uses XAML, or I forget. But it's like you have to. It's a sort of weird chimera of like of XML and C sharp, and then that's what makes a form now or something. But anyway, I tried to do that, and I got not far into it. But it would be nice. It would be nice to not use WinForms.
Right. I mean,
Um, yeah.
it is a lot of work to build tools and to rebuild things and to rebuild things that are already technically working. You know, it's a. Do you ever do that cost evaluation? Like, is it worth the time to make this new tool before I start making it, or is it just like what makes you make a new tool other than the
Oh,
raw necessity of I need to render a thing?
yeah.
What's the breaking point for you in terms of like, no, I'm going to build something to make this less sucky?
I think at some point I got really into the idea that you know, of the value of tool. And I think that might have even been like really with Dead Samurai, you know, way back when.
Hmm.
Uh, what was the thought? And that one didn't have like, you know, inventory or thing, but just in terms of making content, like how, like part of it's like how would I have made content without making tools? Because so that game had a map editor. I'm trying to like think back to, you know, how these tools came about. You know, so it had a map editor, and it had a character editor. Did it have? I think it had a guitar minigame editor, because there was a guitar minigame in there. Did it have any other tools? Because it might have just been the map editor and the character editor, and I wrote a book way those were in the book. Someone in Discord asked me about that book. I'm gonna have to ping them because I told them to message me later. But did Charlie Murder have a loot editor? And so yeah, so for Dishwasher, that one did not have a sprite atlaser. So here's a good illustration. That did
Hmm.
not have a sprite atlaser. So for character pieces, like the pieces that would be assembled into an animated character, they were on a grid, and I think I would have like a text file that would sort of
Oh
describe
no.
what each row was like in the grid. You know, yeah, so stuff like that. The map editor, the map tiles, there was a text file defining the rectangles for each map tile, um, for their atlas. Uh, and so I think with Dishwasher 2 with Vampire Smile, that's when I made the atlasing tool, and I think I'm still using essentially the same atlas for Vampire Smile. Actually, for Vampire Smile, the character animation or the pieces for characters, those were still in those were still in like gridded images, like gridded PNGs. And I think the gridded PNGs had text files that described, you know, like what to expect. But Vampire Smile versus Dead Samurai and Vampire Smile, the gridded PNGs could be of different dimensions. Like the grid wasn't fixed to. I think in Dead Samurai the grid was fixed to like 64 by 64 cells, and that was it. Like
Right.
it was yeah that. So whenever people ask me to re-release the game, I'm like, but it's so blurry. I don't know what I'm gonna do. You know, like I don't want to re-release it as is because it's just so blurry. But like, okay, then if you start remastering it, how much do you remaster it? And it's this choice paralysis,
Right.
and also the fact that like we're just trying to finish Salt and Sacrifice now. That's led me to re-release Dead Samurai anytime soon anyway. Um,
Yeah. Wow.
but yeah, Charlie Murder had atlasing. I'm trying to think if Charlie Murder had like a loot editor. I think it did. And I don't know what information that would have had because so much of it was procedurally generated. Um, but then yeah, Salt and Sanctuary had a loot editor and had a monster editor. Actually, I don't know if Charlie Murder had a monster editor. Um, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it's just it's like creating a system to store information associated with pieces of content. And so yeah, it can be yeah versus doing it in a text file.
No. Yeah. That's the
It's,
worst.
yeah. Oh man, I there was a developer. I'm not gonna say what his name. I'm sure he wouldn't. Actually, he said it in a GDC talk. So has he said it? I don't know. But he made a rhythm game where all of the tracks were stored in text files, and I don't know how. I don't know how.
Right. At that point, it just becomes a lot of trial and error and like
Ah, yeah,
testing and playing and fixing and yeah, that's brutal, man.
yeah, yeah.
It
No.
it's so I guess the lesson here is build your tools sooner than later.
Yeah,
Uh,
I guess I could because you know he asked about cost analysis. I'll put it this way: I have never once regretted making a tool. I've never said like I spent too much time on this. It was a waste of time. I've you know not once has that happened. It's always been like I wish this tool had more functionality. You know, not less, not zero.
right. Not
You know.
that's right.
Um, so
Uh,
yeah, and I've always I guess the other thing is like the tools that I make, they're always like I imagine if say if I worked at at a company where I was making tools for other people to use. None of them would pass a level of muster that like
Right.
they all have glitches. They all have just weirdnesses to them. They all have like if you do this, then this, you might be in a bad state. you know?
Right.
And I'll fix them when I encounter the errors, but I'm not like debugging them thoroughly, right? So as long as they make the content, that's fine. If the tool I'm working on crashes for some odd reason, then it's I'll fix the crash, but like I'm not going to thoroughly test to make sure that the crash
Right.
is
As long
fixed
as it works
in
for
the
you.
tool. Yeah, in the tool. In the
In the tool.
game, that's something else. Yeah, um, but yeah, so they're all and they like usually have a bunch of menus in the tool that's like it'll be like a menu that's like hacks, and like the list of hacks in the hacks menu will be like I don't know, like resize all characters by like 110% or something, like something weirdly specific that I just needed one time, but I'm gonna automate it, but I didn't make like a system for you know automation that's more elegant than just throwing that in a method and you know
Right.
referencing it by a drop down that says hacks. So,
It's the way it
but
is.
hey, it works.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
that's what matters at the end of the day, as long as it works. Um,
Yep. Yep. Oh.
so I guess as we get to the wind down here, is there anything more you want to tell us about Salt? While you've got our ear.
It's gonna be the greatest. It's
You heard it here first, folks.
yeah. It always feels weird like
I
promoting.
know
I,
it
I feel like I
sucks.
feel like it must be different. Again, like I'm always wondering what it'd be like to work at a big company because I've been doing this for 14 years. I've made a lot of games. I've touched a lot of lives. But I have no idea what it's like to work for a big company, and I
Yeah.
kind of fear that it would be awful, but also it could be really cool. Um, but oh geez, I totally what oh yeah, promoting your own game. I feel like if you worked for a big company, promoting the game, that would just be so different because you're talking up
Right.
all of your friends.
Yeah.
I'm only talking up Shane. I can't talk up the I can't talk up what I did, which is like when you look at the game aside from the networking stuff, everything you see, all the that's all me. I can't talk that up. That's too weird. So yeah, I hope you like
Hello.
it.
I thought this was worth your time. Please observe.
The networking is awesome though.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it's like I said, the networking actually it is pretty awesome. It's just like being able to party around in a world together is super cool. And we've talked about I don't know I don't know how committed we are to this idea, but like again like after like post Salt and Sacrifice launch, we're gonna be doing support stuff. But it would be awesome to like revisit Salt and Sanctuary and do like some kind of like a remaster, like a um something where we'd basically have to like rework the game to allow online multiplayer. Oh, it'd be so
And,
hard to do that without wanting to redo so much of the
and
art, though.
to come back full circle to the start of
It
the
comes back full
conversation.
circle. Oh, jeez. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
as you grow and evolve, you eventually want to retouch everything that you've ever done. But you can't.
Salt and Sanctuary did the animation tool did not have inverse kinematic. Um,
Useful tool.
it, what's that?
They're useful.
Yeah, they're useful. Yeah. No, at some point, a friend was like, oh man, like so 2D IK, that's pretty. And I'm like, actually, it doesn't have IK. So I googled, how to like what the formula is for 2D IK, and I plugged it in, because I know a little bit of trigonometry, but not enough trigonometry.
Mm,
You know,
that's right.
is it overrated? I don't know. I mean, it is like figuring out that like the trajectory of an arrow in flight based on rotation was like you know the vector is cosine of the angle comma sine of the angle. Like when I realized, I was like, oh, that's what they were for. Like
Yeah.
all those all of those trig problems in like 10th grade, and it was like, oh, that's what it's for.
I,
Figuring out the trajectory of an object in flight on a 2D plane given a rotation.
mhm, mhm. No, I had to do some recently. I was trying. It was like to be able to track
So,
a floating planet that while the player's camera is like freely controlled to in order to make it so that like you basically so that you have the ability to like look around in any direction at all times, but then no matter what, you end up looking at the planet in space. So getting them all to like kind of come together required more trigonometry than I was ever interested in doing, and it was, I mean, it was a cool feature, but
Right.
not worth
I
it.
mean, if you find that someone has already solved the problem
Yes.
on Stack Exchange, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Right on. Well, man, where can I tell people to look for more ska goodness and more info on Salt and Sacrifice?
Oh boy, yeah. So it's funny. I haven't even updated the site for the most recent video.
That's right. Hot news, scoops here.
Yeah, I've tweeted about it. So I'm Jamesilla on Twitter, which is with one L. I'm Twitter, Jamesilla, and
It's also on the screen.
oh, it's also on the screen. Yeah. The official.
Perfect.
It's both just me though. I mean, it's yeah, it's always
That's good.
it's always cool when people imagine that like we must have like a sales department.
Oh yeah, totally.
But yeah. So that's probably most of where I update stuff. There's a Facebook page for Ska Studios. I updated to say that there was a new video out, but and then yeah, we have a website that I have not even set the page live for Salt and Sacrifice yet. Games, making games is hard. Making games is hard, and then like doing the rest of the stuff is
worse.
Is a hassle. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, we're shooting for Q1 of 2022.
Let's go.
And it's coming. Yeah, I know. I'm like as it gets nearer, I'm like it might be an optimistic point, but we'll see. There are many months between then and now. So.
Well, dude, it's been super good catching up, and it was fantastic having you on the show and talking at length about the history and everything new happening, man. It's super good, and yeah, I'm really glad you came on.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a while.
It has been.
If you're watching us, we've been friends for a long time, but we haven't seen each other in time.
That's true. Right on, gang. Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna sign off now, and I'll send you away somewhere. Goodbye, everybody. It was nice seeing you. Bye.